Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. I have a really quintessential guest for you today, one that it was a matter of time before I could hopefully bring on, Nissim Black. Even if you don't recognize him by name, I am confident that you have heard of his work before. Nissim Black is an American-Israeli rapper, songwriter, record producer, and social media activist / personality. He's easily recognizable in the Jewish community as the only Black Orthodox Jewish rapper. When I think of Nissim, I think of his classic looks wearing all the black Hasidic coats and suits and the large fur hats. Nissim comes from a family of rappers. Both his mom and dad rapped in Seattle, which is where he grew up, in the hood, as he says. Even as a kid, he had always been drawn to religion, and as he'll tell you, his grandfather converted him to Islam, but later, at 14, Nissim converted to Christianity. Before converting to Christianity as a teen, Nissim, which at the time his name was Damien, was even part of a gang called the Gangster Disciples. He was Christian for many years, even a Messianic Jew at some point, and later converted to Orthodox Judaism. He's had quite the life, which he talks about in some of his music. All that is to say is Nissim has been rapping basically since he was a kid, and seeing how his art has evolved with his life is absolutely fascinating. In 2009, now as a husband and father, Nissim had a really pivotal year. He was actively pursuing his career, releasing music, and contributing to the music of well-known artists. He was even one of the final candidates for the role of Notorious B.I.G. in the biopic about him, but that role ultimately went to Jamal Woolard. That year was the year Nissim decided he was going to convert to Judaism. He slowly started stepping away from his rapping career as he was going through the conversion process. Toward the end of the conversion, he effectively cut ties with his previous rapping career and at that point was living in Seward Park within the Orthodox Jewish community. Nissim returned to music only in 2012, and this time the music had a Jewish lens. In 2016, Nissim relocated his family to Israel, where he has lived ever since. Since then, he's had collaborations with iconic Jewish artists like Lipa Schmelzer, Netanel Israel, and others. Nissim likes to say he's Hitler's worst nightmare because he's both Black and Jewish. Currently, he lives with his wife Adina and their 7 children in Beit Shemesh. Nissim identifies as a follower of what's called Breslov Hasidism. Followers of this type of Hasidism make a pilgrimage to Uman, Ukraine every Rosh Hashanah, which you'll hear us discuss. I'm Ukrainian. There's no way I wasn't going to bring it up. This episode was really interesting for me specifically because I could talk to Nissim about his many visits to Ukraine. Ukraine's Jewish history is very tragic and at the same time fascinating. For instance, I remember when I visited Kiev, I learned about the Brodsky Synagogue, which is an Orthodox synagogue that's been around since the late 1800s. In 1895, the local authorities of Ukraine forbade the construction of any kind of Jewish places of worship in Kiev, saying that it would make the city undesirable because their goal was to make Kiev look like the religious center or like the Mecca of Russian Orthodoxy. And if you go to Kiev today, I mean, there are incredible cathedrals and churches all over. They're some of the most beautiful I've seen in the world. So to evade this ban on synagogues, Lazar Brodsky, who wanted to finance the construction of the synagogue, asked if an exception could be made where a private estate could be built and Jews would just practice within it. So rather than building a synagogue, they would build a mansion that had a Jewish place of worship inside it. The city had agreed to this, and Brodsky included a plan or a drawing for the building, which had on it only a side view of what the building would look like. And by that side view, it looked very much like a private mansion. The permission was granted, and the synagogue was built as effectively a disguised synagogue. So if you go there today, the synagogue stands at a crossroads of 2 streets. On one street, it looks just like any building, exactly what the drawing showed. And on the other street, you can see that there's the Star of David, there's symbolism in the architecture, and it clearly shows that the building is a synagogue. So this was the clever trick at the time to enable Orthodox Jews to practice. So that should just give you a feel of some of the history of Jews in Ukraine. Nissim and I also discussed that Ukrainians killed many, many Jews during World War II. The whole country, Jews or not Jews, has just like a persistent trail of death with it, even today, honestly. The Ukrainian national anthem, for crying out loud, starts with Ще не вмерла Україна, which is Ukraine has not died yet. Even still, there's an element of persistence and bravery that's unparalleled from Ukrainian people. It's an unwillingness to settle or to succumb to the Tsarist dictatorship that so many times in history people wanted to impose over Ukraine. It's almost like, dare I say it, Ukrainian people have a chutzpah. I mean, it's incredibly admirable, and I'm very proud to be a Ukrainian Jew. Beyond our conversation about Ukraine, you'll hear Nissim talk about his life story, how he wrestled with religion, his views post-October 7th, and many other things. He's a funny guy. I like his sense of humor. I think he's an incredibly dynamic person. If I ever have the opportunity, I'd love to meet him in Israel or even in Ukraine one day in person. Please enjoy this episode. Hello, Nissim. Welcome to People Jew Want to Know podcast. How are you today?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me on.
What a privilege. I am so excited to speak to you today. I've known about you for years, like literally going as far back as college. I knew who you were, and it's such a privilege to finally have a chance to speak with you. My first question is, tell us about yourself. What do you do, and how did you get there?
Okay, as you said, I'm Nissim Black. That part you at least had right. The only thing I'm jealous of you said you've known about me for years. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. So that's, a little bit on my side of it. But, I grew up in the street, inner city kids, grew up very exposed to gang life and found myself going in the same exact path that I grew up in. And I found myself probably more interested in religion and faith around the time I was 8 or 9, which so much worked out when my grandfather came to live with us. I was a Muslim with him. He converted me basically to Islam. I converted to Islam with him. And then from that to Christianity. And then, later on in years when I was adult by myself, I converted to Judaism. But Nissim is a seeker. I'm a seeker of truth, but I'll seek alone. I'm the type of person where I enjoy being alone, but I am not an introvert by no stretch of the word. I'm a people person that enjoys my space alone. I am an entertainer, and I've been really struggling with this. I used to see myself as an artist, and I'm beyond an artist, really, for me. I'm a spiritual motivator. I'm a mashpia. I guess the new words that everybody uses is influencer, but I don't like using the same words. That's how much of a self-made person I want to be. I didn't want to use the same words that everybody else uses, but I'm just here to inspire people to their best life, and I use anything to make that happen, whether it's my musical talents, whether it's acting, singing, tap dancing. I can't tap dance, but whatever it is, that I can be used, that I could use in order to inspire people, I use it. How did I get here? It's very interesting when people are able to track back their success and say, this led to this, or that led to this, or that. I really can't say that I can track those things. It just, everything was one blessing led to another blessing is all that it is. And as I've grown over the years, I've been able to actually realize that it's not me. Every time I thought I did something or I met the right person at the right time, and it just really never was due to that. Everything that I've had and everything that I've achieved up until this point in my life has only been complete blessings. And I don't know how much credit I could take for it, except for that I was there to answer the call when the call came.
That's amazing. I definitely perceive you as like a vibe, like a presence, far more than just an artist or a motivational speaker or whatever. I only ever had this experience with Rabbi Manis Friedman. Just like some people, when you're in a room with them, you feel like an oomph. Mm-hmm, and not everyone has that kind of, I don't know how to even put it into words, but you just know it when you see it. So right. I think you're spot on with all of that you're saying. I was curious to know, so you alluded to this, you went from Islam to Christianity. If I'm not mistaken, you also had a short stint with Messianic Judaism. And then you converted to Judaism. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that's in the chronological order of craziness.
How did you know that Judaism was the path?
How did I know? The moment I knew, I think I was sitting and I'd, up until this point in my life, I'd already learned everything went to court, basically. It's very interesting that they have this book, I think that somewhere along the same topic where they do this inner debate between the 3 Abrahamic religions, something about something in court. But everything for me literally did go to court. I needed to either prove or disprove what it was that I held so strongly. And at the time when I started this, I was a devout Christian. I really had gotten to the point, I was after a kill or be killed situation with another artist. And now I'm on my journey to remove myself from that world. I had thank God I had some point of reference. I had some spiritual muscle memory of converting to Christianity when I was 14. So I lived a very strong and devout life, I would say, during 15 and 16 years old. I was very strong. I prayed every day. I was like, very, very much so. It was the beginning of defining who I would be as a spiritual being. Religion didn't matter as much, but the way my approach to my faith was defined during that time. I think at this point in my life of me realizing that what I'm lacking in my life more than anything else is God, right? Like that's just what it is. I remember what life was like when I was doing my God thing as opposed to what I'm doing now. And that was just a way better vibe. So I was at that point in my life and I was just spending a lot of time praying, fasting. I was going 3 days in a row without food per week. And I was spending hours and hours in seclusion, talking to God, crying. And at some point, I picked up the Bible, started reading it, and then I said, how do I know even this is true? So I grabbed the Quran, and I got a few different versions of the Christian Bible, and I'm going back and forth, and I'd come across things online, different movies and different debates and different things at that point, creationist versus evolutionist. I became completely obsessed and consumed with finding out where God was. And so what interested me about Judaism more than anything else, which this became a process. That's why the Messianic thing, as you bring that up, that was actually a process. And today as an Orthodox Jew, I would just call it a different denomination of Christianity. But during that time, it was somewhat of a process because I went from this place of being very strong and devout and taking everything to court. And what I didn't even discover later, I discovered at that time, was that the entire existence of God, I'm just saying from the Abrahamic religions, I know there's other religions that are out there, but in terms of God's revelation to the world of the Bible, God basically hung his entire existence upon the fact that there would be Jewish people at the end. Because when you look at the future of all the prophets, everything is surrounding the Jewish people being there at the end. And what's even crazier about it, the descriptions that God gave, that we would be small in number, returning back to the land after a long time without a king, without a priest, without anything, without a sacrifice. And the Jewish people that are there in the land at that time will come back. And we know that part of the promise for not obeying God's law was that the land would become desolate and completely unable to grow without inhabitant. And when we come back to the land, God says the promise of the final end in the book of Ezekiel talks about the time when the Jews are returning back to Israel and the streets of Jerusalem being inhabited and the vegetation growing again in the land and the plants and the trees. We're seeing this all in our time. Like it was like, for me, it's a no-brainer that this is the divine book. And so that led me first into Messianic Judaism. One of the most interesting passages for me at that time was in the book of Zechariah, where it talks about there will be 10 from each nation. I think it was maybe around the 8th chapter, that will come and grab the corner of the Jew and say, I want to go with you, for I heard that God is with you. So there's this major revelation of what happens, something at the end of time, where the nations start to wake up and realize this special relationship between God and the Jewish people. So what I was seeing from my vision at that time, what I was seeing was that it wasn't just Messianic Judaism. The church overall is shifting more and more towards Messianism, meaning more towards Judaism. And this is crazy when people think about this. I haven't even talked to Rabbi Tovia Singer about this, actually. But the whole entire movement of Christianity, I'm saying Protestant Christianity, is moving towards Judaism in several different ways, whether people are just becoming more Sabbath keepers or becoming more Unitarian. People are starting to celebrate more Jewish holidays, even if they believe it's because that it has something to do with Jesus. They're starting to get more and more involved. The Judaism of Jesus is becoming so attractive all of a sudden to the church. And that's coming with the Havas Yisrael. There's a certain love for the land and for Israel. So what I'm seeing is that it feels like to me that this, my stint in Messianic Judaism on my way into Orthodox Judaism was very much so the fulfilling of this passage of Zechariah, of the nation starting to come in towards the Jewish people. And so that was a part of my journey. I went into the Messianic world for a couple of years. Now, the problem I had over there was I needed to know what was going on. I didn't understand anything because it was culturally different than ever going to a church, ever going to a mosque. I walked into this place, they're reading from some old scroll. People were shuckling back and forth, reading in Hebrew. I had no idea. I didn't even know the place was like, maybe I walked into an Orthodox place. I have no idea. But it happened to be a Messianic congregation. And so what happened was, after being there for maybe 2 years of me trying to get some cliff notes from Chabad.org, I actually started getting turned on to Orthodox Judaism because of that, and became more and more inspired by Judaism and more inspired by Jewish life. And what was probably the biggest thing is that I had to get to this place where I had to think about it. Like, did God change his mind? Like, the whole entire thing, this would be the biggest shift of cards ever pulled off in history if God made all these promises to the Jewish people. Now, when you look at Torah, it's very interesting how people overlook this in other religions that still claim that the Bible is a holy text, is that this is perpetual. This is a perpetual covenant between you and me forever and forever. They ask, why don't Jews believe in this? Why don't they believe in that? It's because it was just already written forever. This is a forever thing between us and Hashem. So seeing that obviously attracted me to Judaism, and feeling that God wouldn't change his mind. He would never shift his covenant. He would never get to a place to where everything that God did, and there's been horrible things that happened to the Jewish people over the years, that honestly, God told us those things will happen. But one thing so if I believe that those things happen, I have to also believe him when he says, I'll never leave you. You will always be my people. And no matter how far you go, at the end, we're going to restore all things. So I'm able to see from the proof text that, Hashem says this will happen. Oh, they all happen. So the same Hashem that says that he's never going to leave the Jewish people, they will always be his people, is the same Hashem that said that. So that was one of the many things that was revealed to me on my journey that led me to Judaism.
You have said so many things that I've never really thought about, to be honest with you, but it just makes me realize that Brene Brown always says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. That's how it works in Judaism. Everything is very clear. We know where we stand. It feels safe. Because it's clear, it's easy to understand why it makes sense, because everything's accounted for. There's not like a loose end. There's not something that doesn't make sense. I think it's a really beautiful process that you went through. You really ruled them almost all out. Of the religions, of the main religions in the world, you really tried almost all of them, except maybe like the Asian-oriented ones, like Hinduism and Buddhism.
You're right.
Now your family is in Israel, and you have 7 kids. You grew up in Seattle, and I don't know if you experienced this, considering you had a different upbringing at the time, but I have a friend who grew up in Seattle, and she was one of the only Black Jews, and she experienced severe anti-Semitism growing up in Seattle. And specifically, she experienced anti-Semitism related to the fact that she's also Black. Coming out of the U.S. and making the transition to Israel, especially now in a very historic time for Israel, what principles do you want to instill upon your 7 children and upon all of the people that you interact with? What comes to mind for you? What do you think is important to take away from this time?
So what's important for me is, first and foremost, I should say this, my kids, as Black and as Jewish as they are, they don't even know what that means. They grew up here in Israel. They're from here. There's other Ethiopian Jews. They're very heavily Israeli cultured. You know what I'm saying? All of them, they're falafeled in. So as far as they're concerned, even when they encounter things, and they have, even here, it's not like me encountering things, which I didn't grow up with them. I'll be totally honest. I didn't grow up experiencing anything racial slurs or anything like that. I didn't grow up with it. There were systemic things that were actually horrible, in Seattle, but I didn't grow up with blatant racism. So my kids, they grow up with it sometimes. Just is what it is. We're in very religious neighborhoods, so sometimes kids just fly off at the mouth, and they get it from that. And the person who walks with a blue shirt, he's also going to get it. You know what I'm saying? So it just is what it is. But their response to that wouldn't be the same response that I would have growing up in America and thinking about all the different stereotypes, right? So my children, they don't even know how to process. They'd be way more offended by somebody talking about them as a Jew than they would by somebody about their color, because we're in Israel. It's just a harder culture. So nobody over here, as unfortunate as it sounds in America, nobody just takes it that serious. Nobody takes any of these things that serious. You know what I mean? You could see 2 cab drivers get into like nearly a fist fight or whatever and sit down and enjoy a cigarette with each other right afterwards. It's just Israeli culture. my kids, one thing, even when these type of things have happened in the past, is that we try to give them the tools about being proud of who you are. And there's nothing, and I know that sounds very cliche, but the reason why most of the world is depressed and why everybody's on this type of thing or that drug, because people are not proud of who they are. You understand? So as cliche as it sounds, the world in general is far away from it. Everybody sizes themselves up to who they see on social media and all these other things like that. And people are not comfortable in their own skin. So one of the biggest things that I've done to my kids, I remember one time my kid had an issue. I'm saying on the opposite side, but then when it comes to anti-Semitism, like my kids, we live in a very Haredi neighborhood or whatever, so they're not getting too many encounters with too many anti-Semites. Most of the anti-Semites they know are Jewish. So, so what's interesting about it is that my son one time had an issue, and I went through the whole entire Torah, and I showed him the Mishnah and the Goyim. And the Mishnah and the Goyim talks about over there when a person has a mark on their skin, what color shows up if the person is dark skin, it shows up that they're light. So I said, doesn't it say inside the Torah that when Moses had the tsaras on his skin, it showed up white, right? So that was the color showed up white. I said, so he was probably dark skinned. All right, they would have called him names too as a kid. Some of these things, you sort of de-arm some of these things when it comes to that. When it's come to anti-Semitism, what people have to realize is that, and this is the same thing for my children, same thing for everybody else, and they're aware of it because they feel it, they're talking about it all the time. This person's anti-Shemiut, this person's, and so it's become the new term. But one of the biggest things I tell them is that, listen, the way that we've always combated it is that we've done our thing. Right now, everybody's worried about the PR battle. Are we winning the PR battle? First off, let's be real. There's way more of them than there are of us. It's just not going to happen. Even with controlling and owning all the networks and all the whatever they want to say about us or whatever cases, it's still always going to be more of them than there are of us. And what have we done so well over the last few years is preserve the Jewish people, is that we put our head down and we put our pedal to the metal. And when we are doing our thing, nobody can touch us. Nobody can touch us. So I think what happens, they used to say, I remember I was trying to build up my credit. I come from the hood. And this is no shade on my mother. God bless her soul. She died many years ago. So I can say it publicly. Just when you come from the hood, and you can ask around, just ask other people. Maybe they had a different experience than me, but almost everybody I know in the hood, their mom destroyed their credit before they were an adult, right? I got U.S. West bills in my name from when I was 5. I got all type of stuff. And it's a part of growing up in the hood. Is it horrible? Yes. But is it normal? Yes. So I remember the first time I'm like trying to get advised on how to get a credit. I couldn't get a credit card for, I don't know, first 5 years of my adult life or anything like that. Everybody told me unanimously, anybody I talked to said, instead of trying to pay off old credit, some of the stuff I was able to prove, just wasn't me. I was too young to have a cell phone bill at 4 years old. But what's interesting is that almost everybody told me, and I don't know if it still works this way, but the best thing more than trying to pay off old credit is to build good credit. Start building good credit on top of whatever it looks like is negative. So I think the biggest thing for us is build good credit. Show what we do best. What we do best is we're Yidden. We care about the world. We bring light into the world. And when we're Oy Lagoyim, when we are that light to the nations the way that we're supposed to be, then all the other stuff, it fizzles out. It fades. I honestly believe that what's happening in the world right now is our failure of being who we're supposed to be. And the world can't stand it because we are called the light to the nations. And whenever the light is not shining loud enough, they start screaming and screaming at us about it. They don't know. They think it's this. They think it's because of Hollywood. They think it's because of that. They think it's this. It could be a little bit of that. I believe more so that it's our issue of us putting our head down and bringing more light to the world.
I love this advice or piece of wisdom. It is so simple, but so clear. It's a theme that we're coming back to in the conversation, which is just awesome. Now, you don't know this about me, but I am a Ukrainian Jewish refugee from Donetsk, Ukraine. And I know you've been to Ukraine many times. I would guess you have not been to Donetsk, but you've probably been to many other places. And you just went on a trip, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I just got back from Ukraine. I'm still on my way back. I'm in Israel, but I think I may have left a few pieces of me over there.
What is it like for you to have visited Ukraine so many times? What did you learn on these trips?
I've learned Diakoyu. I missed a few of my words, and I need them because my cleaning help is a Ukrainian refugee also. So I'm happy you told me. So there's a few things I needed to do, and you will save me like 5 minutes if I did not have to use Google Translate right now to ask her to do a couple of things or whatever. Sweet lady, she's become a part of the family. It's very interesting, especially over the last few years of going to Ukraine. I've been going for the last 12 years. Every year I go during Rosh Hashanah. With over the last 12 years, I've been a lot of times, but I'm just saying that for sure, once a year for the last 12 years or so, I've been to Ukraine. And what's actually very interesting is that, and I would love to know your perspective because you grew up there, is that I feel heavy anti-Semitism there. And it could just be because we're all crazy breast lovers and we're coming to take over the whole entire town for a month at a time or whatever the case is. But it feels very heavy. So I'd be interested to know that. I don't mean to turn the interview around, but I felt it very heavily there. I also know there's not too many Black people in Ukraine also. So there's been multiple times I thought about like maybe like I can post up and sell lemonade on the corner and make a killing by making selfies. I'll charge everybody for a picture because I know many people in these places seen Black people in real life before. So it's been very interesting. I also know you should not use your Russian during this time of year in Ukraine also because you may catch a rude awakening. But I tell you one thing that I love and I appreciate about the Ukraine. That place is beautiful. Oh, my goodness. There's so many beautiful landscapes and open fields and just it's literally breathtaking to be in the Ukraine. The culture there, I've developed some really good relationships with people over there, actually, who help us like with the Uman network and stuff like that. So I haven't been in your city, Ninincia, but I definitely spent some time with the community over in Kiev at some time over there. Really loved it over there. Had an amazing time over there. But yeah, there's some good people over there. And sometimes for me, one of the most interesting things about it is, I don't know what your cities like, going to Breslov and some places in Nimirov outside in the outskirts over there. And it's just almost like you're walking through a time capsule of time. There's some places like they just haven't updated in the last couple of years, last couple 100 years. I shot a video actually there. We're shooting a few videos there now. But I remember shooting one and we shot in like some old village or somewhere over there, like where these are all ancient houses. I don't know, I think it was like from the Middle Ages or something like that. Not too many updates and, as we call in Israel, shiputzim, renovations going on in some of those rural areas and the outsides. And to see like old ladies with headscarf wrapped over their head and it's like a cartoon sometimes going back there. So it's very awesome that there's a certain level of European culture being preserved over time when you go in just a few miles this way. And it's like, man, this is a completely different world. That's as much as I learned. The rest of it is all political mumbo jumbo.
This is fascinating for me to hear. I obviously have my own thoughts.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm like too voodoo juju or whatever. Like I'm too spiritual or I buy into these things too much. But I genuinely believe that there are places in the world, just like there are people, that you feel like a spiritual vibe. Like you can't put it into words, but something about the place, like you cannot ignore it when you go to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, right? But in Vegas, you would never feel that because there's a sacredness to the place that you can't describe. Or for example, Bali, it's known as a spiritually very strong place. Like you cannot leave Bali without feeling something. Ukraine is also a very strong spiritual place. It is a place of death. There's just like a vibe of, if there was a country that was haunted start to finish, it would be Ukraine. Everywhere you're walking on corpses because
I hear that. I definitely hear that. Unfortunately, I hear that. That's what some of the people say, like when we're there and I go look at all these fields and these beautiful fields. And then somebody just said it to me. And it's just like, yeah, these are fields. He said, they're fertilized with Jewish blood. I was like, I said, that's pretty extreme, but you're saying it. It's actually very interesting to hear that from you. You grew up there. So most people adore where they grew up at. I grew up in Seattle. I also don't adore it, but whatever the case, I understand.
You know what? I do adore where I grew up, which is so hard to reconcile with. So Ukraine is an interesting place. More Ukrainians killed Jews than Nazis did during World War II. That's why the real number from the Holocaust is closer to 13 million as opposed to the 6 or 7 million that we like to say publicly. The 6, 7 million are just by the Germans. We're not accounting for all the Jews that died right around World War II by Polish and Ukrainian people. The anti-Semitism in Ukraine is alive and well, which is why we have so many Jewish refugees. Even today, I came as a Jewish refugee in 2006. But I came from Donetsk, which is very close to the Russian border, right? That's the contested area, the area with so much war and violence. There were a lot of Jews there. So the anti-Semitism I felt was not nearly as severe as what you would find in Western Ukraine, where Ukrainian people are village people, quote unquote. Some of them don't have toilets. They go to the bathroom outside. They wear their headscarves. They're heavily obedient to religion. But also, they have never experienced anything except extreme Judaism. They only ever interact with Orthodox Jews. So they don't understand that there's a spectrum. And so it scares them because they're experiencing an extreme and that they don't understand. So the anti-Semitism in Western Ukraine is going to be really different than the anti-Semitism in Kiev. Like in Kiev, the anti-Semitism is what we see in the US. It's like, oh, my doctor, he's a Jew. He's probably going to charge me an extra 15% or whatever, like that kind of stuff. Whereas the Western anti-Semitism is straight up like they have horns under their hats kind of thing.
Got it.
It's a different breed.
Wow. That's amazing.
With that in mind, it's like a country of rich history, a history of perseverance, of bravery, of an unwillingness to give up, of incredible cuisine, music, art, nature. And so having the privilege of being a part of both people, for example, one of my grandparents, my grandfather, is not even Jewish. So I have one non-Jewish grandparent. So I have Ukrainian genes and like lineage straddling a culture that like also oppresses me as a Jew. It's an interesting balance. And I try to find the beauty in both, but I fully support every single word you said. There in the more like urban cities in Ukraine, there are a ton of Black people actually. I would say proportionally more than what you would expect, because in the 2000s, a lot of people came from Nigeria to go to medical school in Ukraine. So actually, they also came in Russia during the Soviet Union. My dad was on a business trip to Russia with his friend, and they were on the train or something like that. And there was a Black guy there. And my dad's friend looked at my dad and was like, hey, can you like sneak a picture of me with this Black guy? I'm going to put it on my fireplace to scare the kids. That's what he said. And my dad was like, what? And then the Black man looks at my dad's friend and goes, what am I, so scary looking? Like, why do you need to put me up on the fireplace to scare kids? In perfect fluent Russian. He said that. And so this like business partner that my dad had was like embarrassed. And my dad was like, get me out of here. Who is this man that I'm with?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there are a lot of Black, Russian, and Ukrainian speaking people.
Didn't know that.
You gotta come back to Kiev when you can.
You're right.
And meet them.
Listen, do you know what I would pay to be able to go back to Kiev? My trip, having to fly into Poland and to Romania and whatever, just to get to Uman, for sure. We're all dreaming of the day we could just fly back into Kiev to get there. You can take us as far as you want, but you can't take us away from Uman. Our Rebbe's there. I definitely see that dynamic. And I guess I would feel the same way to some degree about Seattle, right? So Seattle also has this amazing culture, and Seattle is a vibe. However, extremely anti-Semitic, extremely anti-Israel, right? Which the new anti-Semitism is anti-Israel. And I'm saying that as a Haredi person that does not check the Sioni Zion box, I still see it as a facade. I guess in the new social media explanation of what a Zionist is, a person that just believes in Israel's right to exist. So I definitely check that box. But I'm saying historical Zionism, like I wouldn't call myself a Zionist. I'm still very pro-Israel, but I just can't even imagine in a way in the world that people can say that they can separate the two things. You know what I'm saying? You just can't separate the two things after what the Jewish people have gone through in order to even be in Israel. So by default, you become an anti-Semite. But Seattle is very, very hard on Israel. It's a very interesting thing because I grew up in Seattle, though. I didn't experience racism. If I would have grown up in the East Coast, I would for sure experience that. I mean, New York is just a much harder place to grow. I think sometimes New York is even more racist than in the South, to be honest. So it's hard sometimes for me to relate with people all the time when they hear me say, or other Black people get upset when I say I didn't really experience racism growing up. I didn't, because Seattle has this very passive aggressive place. Like, we're very big on, and I'm talking about as a kid, like, we grew up on diversity and accepting other people. And, you know what I'm saying? Very much so. That was a part of the culture there in Seattle, was whatever. But the moment you don't like something, or they step outside of the realm of their box, you're out of there. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to Israel and all these other things like that, once you no longer fit that narrative, then the opposite of that is like crazy. And that's the danger of a place that's heavily cultured on that type of behavior, where we overemphasize the welcoming and acceptance of everybody to that degree, to where on the other side, that the moment that a person doesn't fall into that category of what it is, and it becomes this complete opposite aggression. You've seen during the Black Lives Matter riots over there. I mean, that place turned into a crazy place. Or what's happening in the mental health thing that's going on in Seattle. It's breaking down. Downtown is like complete, what we call it is, it's a hava b'li gavul. It's love without a border. You can't have love without a border. Love includes borders. They have to at some point say, this is good for the city. This is not good for the city. This is good. Coming from a place like that, it taught me a lot about myself over the years, where regulating emotions, for instance, I grew up, and this was in my home, but thinking about this now, this was the culture of which I grew up in, not being able to really regulate my emotions 100%. I know how to be extremely passive or extremely aggressive, but everything in between, I never learned. I never learned how to say no. So it hurt me in every way of my life. It hurt me in business decisions. It's hurt me in relationships. I mean, thank God I've been with my wife since I was 16, so it hurt me like crazy amount. But I had to learn and develop every in-between emotion of being able to put borders in my life and different things like that on my own as an adult, because I didn't grow up with it. It wasn't in my house. It wasn't part of the culture that I come from. And we don't realize how much of an effect that can have to you on a person. Like, I could be 100% passive and allow you to completely rip me off, or I'm going to choke you. You know what I'm saying? But anything to tell you, no, that's not nice. I don't like the way that feels. All of that. I didn't have those emotions. So I had to develop those as an adult and over the years of praying and learning more about myself.
That kind of goes back to the kill or be killed situation you talked about in your life when you had like a career inflection point. It's the same thing, like passive or aggressive. There's no in between, kill or be killed. Right. So your journey, I would say, is amazing. I want to move us on to a fun lightning round of things that I'm dying to know about you that I find really interesting. So, okay, don't think too hard about these. Just answer whatever comes to mind. Okay. First question. Who is your favorite rapper, dead or alive?
Okay. Listen, I'm giving you my first thought. My favorite rapper growing up, who I don't listen to anymore, is Jay-Z. What can I say?
Oh my gosh. Do you ever see the theories about Jay-Z and Beyonce, about thanking Beyonce when you get your award?
I probably believe like 98%. That's why it's hard for me to say, what can I say? Jay-Z was my guy growing up. And then, come on, I was winged off of Jay-Z by Kanye. And then, come on, like my whole world has been like turned upside down. I left Seattle, I left Jay-Z, and then everybody I start to look that becomes an anti-Semite, or they end up becoming part of Illuminati or something.
Fair enough. There's this lady that's going around like giving expose interviews about what she knew about P. Diddy and Jay-Z, and I feel like she's going to get shot one day outside of her house, accidentally, quote unquote. It's a brave woman.
Very brave, she is. Very brave.
Okay, next question. Who is your favorite Jewish musician, dead or alive?
Oh, very good. My favorite, I always give a very cliche answer for this. I think I have to say it's going to sound crazy, but I think Shlomo Carlebach, for me, just was amazing. He was only playing a few chords or whatever, but it seemed like he stole a lot heavily from soul and gospel music. I know he's this theory where he never listened to anything else like that. Other sources say other things, but he's had this soul gospel vibe and was willing to let himself go with the music and spiritually so that I know there's controversy surrounding almost anybody I'm going to say, but it wouldn't be best if I didn't tell you the truth.
Awesome. Okay, and last question should be the easiest one of the three. Favorite place in Israel?
Oh, very easily. Beit Shemesh. Not Jerusalem. Listen, there's too much traffic in Jerusalem. It's ridiculous. The place has been overcongested. And guess what? As much as we long for Zion, what are we longing for when we're talking about in all of our prayers and everything about Jerusalem? We're longing for the opportunity to go up there to the mountain, the holy Zion, and to give an offering and to be able to experience the holiday and the magnetic pulling of the singing of the Levim and that wonderful, awesome experience. And then after all of that, to go back home. That's what we did. We went back home. My home is in Beit Shemesh, and I love it here. This is my favorite place to be. Apart from, I would say very second close after that would be Tveria. Tveria is, I love water. And there's something about that place. It's not 100% every building or whatever pretty. It's pretty old over there, but the water and being in Tveria, these are my two favorite places. But Beit Shemesh is my Yerushalayim.
Solid answer. How can people connect with you on social media and learn more about your work?
So you can connect more through social media by going to my website, nissimblack.com. As it stands right now, you have a link to every single website, whether to follow or to subscribe to me. I'm on YouTube, Nissim World. You could catch me on Instagram, Nissim Official, and Twitter, at Nissim Black. And you could catch me on all the platforms.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. I have one final question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest of the podcast. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know podcast?
People Jew Want to Know podcast. Who would I nominate? I got to think of somebody you haven't done already. So I have to think somebody off the beaten path. I'm close. I'm in the room. I'm in the room with the people now. I'm walking through.
Take your time.
This. I put down that drink. I would say probably, I don't know if it'd be possible. I mean, anything's possible. I would probably say, my wife. Is that too close to home? I'd be interested to.
No, that's amazing.
See how she would answer questions and everything like that. She's sometimes hard to pull, but I think my wife would probably be somebody I would nominate.
That's really a People Jew Want to Know. I believe it. That's an amazing nomination. Thank you so much for doing this, Nissim. One day we're going to be eating, I don't know what we can have that's kosher in Ukraine, but we're going to be eating some kind of Ukrainian kosher adapted food in the streets of Kiev and laughing about our conversation and meeting Nigerian medical students on the streets of Kiev, and it will be wonderful.
Amazing. I'm looking forward. You have a blessed day.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.